Mari, thank you for your message. Let me go and find that live stream right now. Hold on. Hello and welcome everybody. I welcome you back warmheartedly to the Fountains Convergence Room with a focus on sacred economics in action. And before we get to start our beautiful program, I want to also welcome the tech team support that is here on board with us, Tiana Yakut and later on Marjine, who are making sure that our boat gets a beautiful ride. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat box. And if you could kindly keep your mics muted while presenters are speaking so that we can get a crystal clear sound, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. And as we're beginning, I would like to introduce dear grandmother Jyoti Ma with a more official introduction. And then Jyoti, it would be beautiful if you could open us up with a prayer, set the sacred container, if that feels good to you.
Sure.
Wonderful, thank you. And welcome on board, everybody. Hi, Cherie, good to see you. Hello, hello. Just giving people a little bit of time to land.
May I just say one short thing?
Sure.
I feel that I have been called here to offer to you guys what's around me, so that you can be here.
Thank you, Cherie. That looks gorgeous. Mother Earth all around you. Thank you for bringing her into our circle. That's
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay, well, now we're 2 minutes over the starting time. I want to welcome you all one more time to the Fountains Convergence Room and our beautiful afternoon that we have ahead, focusing on the subject of sacred economics in action. And before we start the program, I want to take a minute to welcome our dear grandmother Jyoti Ma and give a more formal introduction so that all of the ones that don't know her yet can know her path and her walk of service, most importantly, a little bit more closely. Grandmother Jyoti Ma is the grandmother vision keeper of the Center for Sacred Studies. She co-founded Kayumari with a spiritual community in both America and Europe. She supported the convening of the International Council of 13 Indigenous Grandmothers and the Unity Concert in the Black Hills of South Dakota. She is the founder of The Fountain. Its mission is to restore an economic model that is based on reciprocity and collaboration, guided by nature and the sacred. She serves as a delegate of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations. And it's through this current work in collaboration with The Fountain that a global sacred territories initiative is evolving to protect Mother Earth's sacred sites and her original principles. Jyoti has devoted her life to bringing unity to the planet by facilitating the development of alliances between individuals who are guardians of original culture and traditional medicine ways. Through this work, collaborative relationships with organizations that are focused on economic, social, and environmental solutions have developed creatively, addressing the global challenges of our time. And with all of that said, Grandmother Jyoti, a warm-hearted welcome.
Oh, thank you. I'm always humbled by such an introduction, but I must say that I'm just listening to the instructions Mother gives me. I'm her feet and hands, if you will. So I just want to welcome you all here. It's been an exciting, very intense at times, days with the sun sparks going off and the technical world not knowing what to do with all of that. But the water has flowed. The inspiration of the water has flowed through each of our 3 days. And here we are at the end of our third and final day. I'm just thankful that the World Unity Week has brought together so many people from all across this planet that are standing up in unity together throughout a whole week. It's created an amazing virtual village. We're one small part of that village. And so there's a lot to see. But I'm understanding that there are going to be links to everything later, so you can go and see it if you weren't able to drop in. There is such a table, such a rich table that has been set. And I'm appreciative that for those that are here and those that will listen later, that you can drop in and hold a vision with us about our sacred economics. You see, the mission of the fountain is to restore an economic model that is based on reciprocity and collaboration and guided by nature and the sacred. And so today, as things flow, you're going to get to hear some of the different perspectives about how to approach that. And what I'm also excited to say is that we are in a moment of high collaboration with all of the ones that are gathered here and that you'll hear from later, but our story goes further and wider in a very global way. And so it is mounting a wave of consciousness that we are now all participating in. So I welcome you, I welcome you, I welcome you, and I welcome all our presenters, and I bow in humble appreciation to our team who has worked countless hours to bring all of this together and to weave it all week long. So with that, before I pray, I understand that there's a little video that has been dropped in that brings nature into our story. And I would really love for that to happen next. And I'll end with a short prayer.
Here we go. I think it's coming up now.
This is a moment where patience is the pill we have just swallowed, and we will have to take many of them as we take this walk.
Let's be quiet for a moment and drop out of our minds and into our hearts. Let's listen to the songs, the melodies, the tunes that our hearts play, winging their way from each one of us to each other of us. Connecting us, bringing us together. Bringing us into harmony with each other bringing us into love.
So I'm just going to sit with all of you in that beautiful space of love and unity and heart, and offer this short prayer as we open our sessions today. Dear Mother, Father, God, this is Jyoti. I'm sitting here on this sacred territory of the Pomo and the coastal Miwoks, offering this prayer to you today. I give great thanks for the morning star that announced this day was coming and the sun that brought its light so we could all stand up in it. I give great thanks for the breath of life that has come from the original times and circulated through all of mankind, humankind, womankind, childkind. Every day when we stand and take a breath, as we sleep and we breathe, this is the same air, the same breath you breathed into this creation so long ago. And for this, I give great thanks. I give great thanks for all that has this hand on us. The ancestors have their hand on us. I can feel them guiding us, protecting us, and showing the way. Please help us listen. Help us listen to this instruction that our original people carry and are offering up to us in this critical, critical time. Let us step out of the box of what we know and follow this instruction into maybe a place we don't know yet. Let the mystery of it all help us craft what is needed by Mother Earth herself in order for humankind to continue to walk here in this creation. Our time is critical, and the time is now. I give thanks for you and how you hold us and how you love us and how you live in us. I give thanks, I give thanks, I give thanks. And
Thank you so much. Jyoti, were you complete or did you want to say some more?
no, I was just going to flow into how we got here.
Please go. Absolutely.
Okay. I'm just going to take a moment. They've asked me to take a moment and say, how did the fountain come to be? How did it come to exist? And it started 9 years ago. It actually started way before that. It manifested itself 9 years ago. And when I caught this vision, I had been speaking with a friend that actually ended up seed funding the very first part of this story. And she had sent me home for a week to meditate, to see what was wanted by spirit. And I caught this diagram of what the fountain should look like. And I took it back to her. And I had the mission, as I shared with you earlier. And she got quite excited about it. And so she ended up giving the seed funding. And now it was my job to see what this seed that I'm carrying, called the fountain, needed. So we went down to meet a small group of us. Loretta Afraid Bear Cook, Bethany Yarrow, one of my spiritual daughters, went along to translate, and we went to Colombia to meet with the 4 original peoples. I had spoken earlier with one of them about the nudging that was going on, about how to open the seed that I had been handed. And so that's what guided me into Colombia. When we arrived, they're all representatives from all of the 4 original people. And at this point, we've worked with the Arawaka and the Wiwa and the Kogi. Many of you may recognize the name of the Kogi, since they have been the ones that have been more out there with that message, particularly from the beginning times of them coming down off the mountains to take care of their little brother. As the earth said, you must go down and take care of your little brother because your little brother is getting lost. And so they're seen as the elder brother through all around the globe and all of the original people's places that I have sat. So they looked at this. We went into many hours of discussion. They asked me, because I'd kind of drawn this template, if you will. They asked me, where did you get this symbol? And I said, well, in my meditation. Why? And one of the Kogis said, because that is one of our most precious original symbols. And that's exactly where the fountain needs to sit. And we need to sit there too. And so ever since that time, the mamos, who are the spiritual elders, the male elders of these 4 original people, they go into consultation. And when they go into consultation, they do not sleep, eat, or drink water for however long that consultation has been directed by Mother Earth. Could be 5 days, 7 days, or much longer. When they come out, because they've been in the source of it all, they come out with the instruction. So they would consult, and then they would come and bring us this instruction, and we would walk it out. And then we would hold ceremony to celebrate and give gratitude for what we had learned in those steps. Then we would go back to consultation. And so it has been up through these 9 years that brings us to be with you today. And when we first started this journey, I don't think I could have ever told you where this was going to lead us and the people it was going to gather around itself and the work that was going to reveal itself. But it's been an amazing walk. So now we sit here on the world stage, really beginning to speak and meet with many collaborators around the planet, many that have also heard the call and are standing up. They sit in governments, they sit in organizations, they sit in corporations, they have their own initiatives, our movements. We are all coming together to converge now. That's what she said. We've been through several years of the high levels of collaboration that needed to be developed and formed. And now we are at a point of convergence. There is a time clicking. The Kogi told us many years ago through their prophecy that we were in the ending times, and the ending times would fall into the beginning in 2026. That's not very far off, you see. And as this occurred, those that were prepared, those that were already living and working with the original people and the original principles they have taught us, those would be the ones that would bring the new dawn forward. The new dawn has been prophesied by many of our original people around this planet. And so, as they said, the ending was falling into the beginning. We must watch the ending to stay informed, but to stay focused on that which was breaking through. That which is breaking through is going to give voice today in some of our presenters. That which is breaking through has a spirit within itself that is unified in its nature and focused on this instruction from Mother Earth, because we know that we must listen to her now. We must listen to her now. I was just in conversation with a brilliant, amazing woman, and she brought up a question that she was posing. She said, what would happen if Mother Earth was represented in all the board meetings and corporations around this planet? That in itself would cause a discussion, wouldn't it not? Thought it was a brilliant question. So that's where we are. That's how we came. There's so much more to this story, but I want to be able to sit back and allow those that are bringing the breakthrough forward. And many of them are our partners. Some of them that will be here today are from the Mother Earth delegation of United Original Nations. And Mother threw a lightning bolt in London in 2019. And it was an amazing moment. It was when we heard there was about 26 delegates there, of which I was one. It was at the Flourishing Diversity Summit. And it was our third day. And in that morning, we had just heard that they had started more fires in the Amazons, and they were starting to pour 2.5 tons of radioactive waters from Fukushima into the ocean. And now I've heard they do this daily. This is what's pouring into our mother's blood and into ours. At that moment, it was like a lightning bolt got thrown down upon us. And one of the Maori elders that was there stood up in her regalia and did a traditional call to action in that moment. And so we met through the day about what to do with this. The mandate that we were handed in that moment was to declare your sovereignty and to restore the original caretakers to her territories. She needed it done and done now. And so we were all leaving quite early the next morning. So they asked myself and Loretta Afraid-a-Bear Cook and Arena Rose, who called us into action to continue and carry this on. And that led to the development of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations. And they are giving us our instruction and our guidance. We are following that, and we are listening to the prophecies they all walk with, because prophecies have prepared us for this moment we're standing in, and prophecies will instruct us. And so they are now. So this is the fountain. The Kogi call us the fountain for natural order in our existence. That's what I have come to understand. The title they gave us 9 years ago, which I have come to understand in a much deeper way. And it is an ordering and a reordering, if you will, that Mother Earth is calling for, a restoration to return to an original way of life that sustains life and honors all life as sacred. So I give you my thanks, and I'm going to sit back now and enjoy these presentations along with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jyoti Ma, for giving this beautiful overview of how far we have come, as a community, as a mission, and as a vision that unites us to really restore sacred lands and to apply the tools and the methods and the ways of sacred economics in a way that it restores culture, that it restores language, that it restores the well-being and the true essence of who we are, and also heals the history of where we come from. Thank you for that prayer, Jyoti. I always appreciate how you set the sacred container and how you hold us and guide us in that way. And now would like to also flow over to dear Stephen Loving, who has been with the fountain pretty much since the start, pretty much since its inception in 2012, like Grandma Jyoti Ma shared. And I would like to say a couple of personal words and then, present Stephen and his work by reading his biography. But I have gotten to know Stephen in around 2014 and 15, and his great advisory support to the fountain and his great passion and background in knowledge and entrepreneurship and whole systems thinking and weaving has been a real true blessing to the way that the fountain has also moved itself, understood itself, structured itself, and prepared also its way of understanding land trust and the land trust movements, and connecting the dots also around sustainable economic solutions, and how is it that we can bring regenerative economic solutions to the restoration of the sacred land. Stephen has played a significant role in that in many other ways. And with all of that said, I would like to just share his biography with you so that we can get the greater context. So let me start with that. So Stephen Loving is a visionary, a bridge builder, a unifier, a philanthropreneur, and a writer. His life's destiny and mission is catalyzing investments in whole system human enterprise with nature's wisdom hard-coded inside of it. What a mission, Stephen. Stephen says, I'm a Dutch-American national committed to accelerating wholes greater than the sum of their parts, pursuing my life's journey, sensing humanity's emerging future, while assembling its building blocks, a piece at a time. I'm a founder of Planet 2025 Network, a non-for-profit venture with a mission to catalyze a peace, sustainable way of life by 2025, and Power of One, a successor charitable organization dedicated to inspiring and empowering integrated action by people and organizations toward transformation to a peaceful, sustainable global society. I would also like to share with you that Stephen's recent publications are on living business and True North, on truth, trust, and love, and imagining philanthropy for life, a whole system strategy for transforming finance and growing true wealth. And we're going to share those links with you as Stephen opens up his presentation. And with all of that said, Stephen, welcome on board, and I want to hand the staff to you.
Thank you so much, Christian, for a wonderful introduction, and thank you, Jyoti Ma, for inspiring all of us on a consistent basis. It has been a wonderful ride, a wonderful journey, challenging always, but we are all on a shared mission. Christian, can I share my screen? And I may want to show some slides.
Yes, certainly you can. Margine or Tiana, would you kindly share the screen? Thank you.
It's been so exciting so far, the days, and you know, lots of rich material in the presentations. It's been very nice.
Yes, Stephen, that's true. Here we go. Now you've been made co-host and you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay, sure. Okay, how do I do? Ah, there we go. Can you all see this?
Yes, Stephen, thank you.
Oh, great. Yeah, so I thought I would, I'm really going to improvise a lot, but I thought I would focus on investing in nature and why we should invest in nature. And it has a lot to do with the concept of leading from the future of life. You know, we're all thinking about the future of life, especially in these challenging times where we've been confronted with this evolutionary impulse of COVID, and it made us rethink lots of things and reorganize our lives. And I think a lot of that still needs to you know, be processed and be taken much further in terms of answering the question, where do we want to go, where do we want to be, and what do we want to become as future humans. Yesterday I just received a presentation from a colleague of mine and us, known by many of us, Annelou Smitsman, who is coming out with her new book, a collaboration with Jean Houston. And she had, and it's basically on the subject of future humans. And it's I'll share the links later. If possible, we can follow it up by email. But it's a wonderful way of explaining how we can bring the future into the present and make things happen. And that's really where we are sort of right now. So for me personally, I've come to understand that my life path or destiny in many ways is around truth, trust, and love. And in the context of what we've been discussing this week, but also World Unity Week, the Fountain's mission, I think this what I wrote here might resonate. Climate change, the fraying web of life, the loss of biocultural heritage and diversity cannot be addressed in isolation. So let us be islands of coherence, shifting life to a higher and natural order of existence, respecting the rights of all sentient beings, a global reset governed by wisdom of our hearts, based on responsibility, respect, reciprocity, and right relations. Let's meet and have dialogue within the shared unifying field of our being and doing. So I've been in my work quite interested and concerned always with the future of life and where we're going. So one thing is quite clear, that humanity's business, enterprise, and finance model needs an urgent upgrade. We see all the signs on the wall. For too long, we've extracted from Mother Earth, and it's really high noon. We must now reciprocate her gifts. And I think when Jyoti and I met, it was in the context of what would result later on in the co-authoring of Imagining Philanthropy for Life, a book that came out in late 2017, early 2018. And we worked there with the U theory U of Otto Scharmer, of the Presiding Institute in MIT. And I've always thought of it as a wonderful way to see how we can shift from an old worldview to a whole new worldview. And it's all about, how whole systems can change and transform. And it's about transformation of self and society. And where we are right now is really, at ground zero of our being and doing. And this is where we have to reflect on what is basically an entropic system of human enterprise. And we need to reinvent ourselves and invest in the future massively and prototype the future, which needs investment, lots of entrepreneurship, working with communities, and most of all, working in harmony with nature. So if we look at how money flows and investments flow, we really have to question what is our true intention. Because if our intention is good and we all want to have this wonderful world that we know in our hearts is possible, then why isn't it happening? And I think lots has to do with, if you look at how we invest in life-supporting ecosystems, they're essentially creating and maintaining a functional web of life. And that's the foundation of all of our very existence. So if we don't maintain and support that, it is fraying, and we see the results and the challenges that we're faced with today. So if you look at how investment flows go, about close to 400 trillion or so we have, it consists of the global investment landscape, and a small, relatively 8 to 10%. It's growing much more, much faster because of COVID, but is dedicated to what you could call sustainable investing, or investing that follows ESG criteria. Environment, social, and governance criteria. But for the most part, for let's say 90%, we're maximizing profits at the expense of people and planet. So there lies a big challenge, and if you look at it more granularly, and if you look at are we investing in life-supporting ecosystems? Are we investing in the proven stewards of life-supporting ecosystems, indigenous communities, peoples all over the world? Then it is probably not even 1% of all of the investment flows. So what does that say about our intention? What if we only allocate less than 1% to the very foundations of our civilizations, there's something wrong. So this is where we need to flip the switch, so to speak, and turn the light on. To give you a very broad overview is that we need to connect with what you could call the source code for life, or our source codes of life. Somehow our financial and economic system dances a dance where the financial wealth and well-being is very unevenly divided, and it's sort of reaching beyond planetary and social boundaries of the possible. At the same time, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 goals that we need to reach by 2030. We also have now entered the decade of ecosystem restoration. So how do we get there if we don't invest in it? And this is really where we have to flip the switch. And I think it has a lot to do, and this is also explained in Imagining Philanthropy for Life. We have to jumpstart this future by triggering a global spiral of life and of giving that needs to initiate and spark sort of this spiral of life that can regenerate the planet. And it's all about flow and making sure that when you invest in the future, that the success of that effort generates flows that create ever more momentum to do more and more good through initiatives, breakthrough initiatives, tipping point initiatives that work well. So that is sort of the essence of what I wanted to share. And also the very idea that we're really now at this important choice point where we need to think very hard about how we mobilize conscious capital, which is not about maximizing profits, but it is really about helping to usher in the new prototypes of a world transformed, a whole world, and doing that very much in partnership with the entrepreneurs, the social entrepreneurs, the creative people that are working on the solutions, still often in laboratories or in their garages or beyond, but we need them dearly to usher in that new. And that is the collective blind spot we have. And I'm sure that Frank Dixon, a good friend and colleague of mine, is going to talk about that as well in the context of systems change investing. And we really need to look at the root causes of why our systems are not functioning. I also hope that Frank will touch a little bit upon money creation, because the way we create money is really indebting us all. And it's going to be now also, after governments have printed almost $10 trillion post-COVID. It's going to create huge inflationary pressure, but it's also indebting taxpayers around the world. And we haven't really delved into the question of how is all that money spent? And is it really going to be used to invest into our life-supporting ecosystems? Or is it more this technology oriented future where we might be plugging in to chips in the back of our neck and become half human and half robot and go to Mars and stuff? But maybe it's better we sort out things on this planet first. So thank you very much. I'm probably over time, but I look very much forward to the rest of the presentations. And thank you, Christian, Jyoti, and all the Fountain team.
Thank you, Stephen. What a beautiful presentation. And it's such rich in material. I would want to go and sit and study to really fully take it in. And again, it's a presentation that I enjoy looking at again and again in the context of the different projects that you're developing, much like the Madagascar project that's moving forward in a beautiful way. So thank you for your presentation. And I want to open up to our beautiful circle here for a quick question and answers, reflections, 60 seconds, let's make it short. But what did this presentation move inside of you? Where you're at with your reflections? Is there a question that you would like to hand over to Stephen? Now is your time to do that. Thank you.
I would just like to say one thing, that Stephen is a great friend and colleague, and I love his work. And we've gone through it several times. I think it's fantastic. I think I also wanted to point out, in addition to the great ideas that you have, that you're also doing excellent work on the ground in Madagascar. So you're kind of bringing the theory into reality very well, I think. And I know you just spoke about that yesterday, but I think it's a great project for people to know about. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Frank.
Good seeing you.
Anybody else, or are we good to?
I'll just ask one question.
If there's hello, maybe we're frozen.
We hear you.
Stephen, can you hear us? Jyoti was going to ask you a question. I think there was a slight delay.
I was just going to ask you a question. I know you don't have, this is going to be one that might just provoke people in thinking, but you said we're in a critical point. We're in that place of choice. Right now, in this very moment, what does that choice look like?
So if I heard the question right, what does the choice look like?
Yeah, this choice, we're in the very critical moment.
Yeah. I think that technology is developing so rapidly that it is unbound from moral and ethical concerns. And at the same time, that technology is offering lots of incredible possibilities. One of the other presenters later on from Seeds, I think that Seeds has a very hopeful message, because they are experimenting with cryptocurrency, or a new way of issuing currency, and it's also very much linked to a life-supporting ecosystem vision, if you wish, of the future. And it holds the promise and the lure of actually encoding something into our way of being and doing. You can think of it as a source code, as an algorithm, as a change in DNA of our financial system that keeps us in check. Another way of thinking about this is that we currently have a financial and even legal system that misses a governor. And a governor is, it could be a governor of a state, but a governor can also be a device which makes sure that when there's, for example, excess steam, that there's a way that steam is let off, and the system, mechanical system, but you can also think of it as nature. Nature needs to be in balance, and we're missing a governor that ensures that we're staying in balance and equilibrium that is reasonable. And now everything is very much in untenable, developing into untenable excesses and directions. So I hope that with all the smart people we have around the world and in our network, that we can somehow figure out this source code for life or design for how a future living organization should be put together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Jyoti. Well, any more questions, or are we good to move on to our next presenter? Looks like we're good. Well, thank you, Stephen, for your sharing. And well, we are going to hear from Ulrich John from the Original Voice Trust very, very soon. However, he's still making his way here. And so what I would love to do is take the opportunity, Frank, to hand over to you. And so you're early in the queue now. And before we do that, I would like to give a brief introduction to who you are and your incredible contribution and work in the world.
Thank you, Christiane.
Thank you, Frank, for joining us. Frank Dixon established Global Systems Change in 2005 when he recognized that system change would be the dominant sustainable issue of the 21st century. His experience as the managing director of research for the largest ESG research company, Innovest, and sustainability advisor to Walmart and other organizations showed that flawed economic and political systems compel all companies to degrade the environment and society. He conducted several years of multidisciplinary research to produce a true whole system approach to sustainability, described in the Global Systems Change books, which we're going to share the links. The approach provides practical system change strategies for all major areas of society. In the corporate and financial sectors, system change investing represents the most advanced and effective sustainable strategy. Frank Dixon advises businesses, investors, and governments on sustainable and systems change. He has presented at many corporate and financial sector conferences around the world, as well as leading university, including Harvard, Yale, Stanford, MIT, and Cambridge. Frank Dixon has an MBA from the Harvard Business School. He is a fellow of the World Academy of Art and Science. And with all of that said, Frank, a warm-hearted welcome, and I would like to hand over for you in the presentation.
Thank you very much, Christiane. And I was expecting to go in about a half an hour, but I don't mind jumping up a little. It's always better to go sooner rather than later anyway. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, let's see. There you go. Can you see it okay?
Just fine. Thank you for
Good.
that, Frank. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go. I would just like to say that I'm really honored to be here. I've been on a journey for many years, an inner and an outer journey that, and I've tried to be guided by nature. I've respected and learned from original wisdom from a distance. So when I had a chance to get involved with the fountain and Jyoti and Christian and everyone else involved with the fountain, and by implication, the original people that you're working with, I thought it was a great honor. I look with great reverence at the original peoples and all they've done. They've lived sustainably on this planet for so much longer than we have, and they've got a lot of great wisdom that we could learn from. So I think, I'm going to talk mostly about the corporate and the financial sector, but just to start out with the big picture, I think the word sacred is a great word for sacred economies, because, if you're talking about something that literally gives us our life and is almost infinitely more sophisticated than we still understand, sacred is the right term for it. We are, but in spite of it being infinitely beyond what we consciously understand, we know everything on a deep level. We are nature. We have the potential to express the same high level of sophistication and coordination and prosperity seen there. So I think while things do look very dark now, we've got major problems. I agree with what many of the original people have said, that we're on the verge of a great opportunity. We've maybe only reached 1/1,000,000th of our potential. So I think we can be, this is a time of opportunity. I wrote, as Christian said, I wrote a series of books about how to evolve human society into sustainable form. And the foundation of all that is consciousness. Everything, society is a mirror that reflects back to us our thinking. Climate change and every other problem that we have comes foundationally from our level of consciousness. And the solution will be, as Einstein implied, will be higher consciousness. So before I get into the corporate and financial sector material, I just wanted to mention one way to think about consciousness. In writing the Global System Change books, I mentioned three segmentations of consciousness. If you look at nature, everything, the individuals don't think about what they're doing, but they wind up being immensely coordinated, reaching levels of sophistication and prosperity that we don't come close to. That nature implicitly operates on a unity consciousness, but it doesn't think about what they do. So you could call it unconscious unity. As humans ascended, and the original people retained their awareness of unity and operated in harmony with nature. But as humans, as the intellect ascended over the intuitive, we kind of forgot about our connection to nature and each other and entered the illusion of separation. So you could say that the consciousness of modern humanity could be called conscious separation, in the sense that we think we're separate from each other. That produces fear, belief in the need for competition. And in that environment, those with greater physical strength, aggressiveness, and competitiveness, men were more highly valued, while the qualities that women have more than men on average, wisdom, cooperation, big picture thinking, multitasking, empathy, the things we need to save ourselves, are undervalued. So as we begin to balance the power of men with the wisdom of women, I think we'll move forward into a new level of consciousness, which could be called conscious unity, meaning we understand we're separate parts, but also part of one interconnected larger system. So with that, let me move into the corporate and financial areas. Just to kind of frame it up, for many years, I was the head of research for the largest company in the world, rating corporations on sustainability performance. And we made the case that sustainability leaders make more money because they're better managed overall. We proved that. That turned out to be true. But it became pretty clear after a while that no company could get anywhere near sustainability if they tried to stop pollution, stop making unsafe products, tried to stop harming other stakeholders. Their costs would go up and they'd go out of business. So our economic, and the reason for that is our economic and political systems didn't hold companies fully responsible for negative impacts. And they basically create a situation that says companies must harm the environment and society to exist. If they don't cause harm, they'll go out of business. Nobody intended that. It's the perfect example of reductionism. So it became clear to me nearly 20 years ago that at least 80% of the solution to sustainability was changing the systems that control companies instead of changing companies themselves. But the corporate responsibility and responsible investing movements are still largely focused on trying to change companies instead of systems and addressing symptoms instead of root causes. Like Stephen said, we have to address root causes. For example, climate change is a symptom of our economic and political systems that basically compel companies to emit carbon. So if we want to resolve these problems, we have to switch the focus largely to root causes, which means, for example, that the solution to climate change has little to do with climate change. It has to do with changing the systems that create it. So that's the system change investing approach that I developed a while ago. Shifts the focus from symptoms and changing companies to root causes and changing systems. After developing that, I realized though that we need to have a lot more information about how to evolve human society into sustainable form. There's a lot of good work being done out there around system change, often focused on economic reform or other specific types of changes, monetary, whatever they might be. But in reality, as Einstein said, everything is part of one interconnected system. So in nature, each creature intuitively does what it's compelled to do, and that adds up to a perfect solution. Humans following our hearts, if we each did what we were compelled to do, we might also get there to a perfect solution, but we don't operate at the unity consciousness of nature yet. So it would be helpful to have an intellectual approach that kind of finds a way to take this most complex whole system and makes it easy enough for average citizens to understand. That's what I sought to do with my global system change books. They identify systemic solutions in all areas, and they provide the type of framework that we need to move forward. So the global system change approach provides a roadmap, a system change roadmap for humanity. And this is important because for responsible investing, something that I know a lot about, I developed the models for the company I worked for. And to have a model, you have to have a frame of reference. For companies, it's their negative impacts. If we know what they are, we can judge if they're effectively eliminating them. System change investing gets companies to look at system change by rating them on system change performance. To do that, we have to know what system change overall looks like. Once we understand the process of evolving humanity into sustainable form, we can identify the optimal corporate role in it, and then aspects of that role become metrics in in system change rating models. So the global system change roadmap has three parts. It starts with the what we want, and then it goes to how we get there. The what we want is sustainable society. And one way to define that is by using the laws of nature. The SDGs discuss many aspects of sustainable society, but it's a human-centric view. The reality-based view is based on the laws of nature. These go beyond human ideas. They're the factors that have been guiding all life for 3.5 billion years. These are the things that will determine completely whether or not humans survive and prosper on this planet, unless an asteroid hits us or something. So the laws of nature are qualities of sustainable systems at all levels. When these aren't present, the system either dies or changes. They include the things I have listed here: seeking balance, not growth; producing no waste; equitable resource distribution; overwhelming cooperation; limited competition at the individual level; equally valuing generations and species; decentralizing production and governance; and enabling individuals to reach their fullest potential. Also implied qualities of natural systems are democracy, full cost accounting, no externalizing costs, equality and full employment. These go beyond human ideas and theories. We know that this is going to be happening on Earth. This isn't debatable. The only question is, will we be here? And the answer to that is, if we do these things, then yes, we have the potential to be here. Right now, we're grossly violating these laws of nature. If we don't figure out how to voluntarily live within the laws and limits of nature, then nature, as it has been doing for a long time.
Meet from 1 p.m. to
So
3
Frank,
p.m. on Saturday
we
in
need to-
room 1.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies, I have no idea where that strange voice came from, but
Thank you. It's nice to not be the only one talking. Okay. So anyway, so the first part, it's a 3-part roadmap. The first one is sustainable society as defined by the laws of nature. The second part are the systemic changes needed to get from here to there. And the third part are the actions required to bring about those changes. So in terms of the second part, necessary systemic changes, obviously I can't spend a lot of time on this, but 3 principles are emulate nature, democracy, and the rule of law. Nature provides essentially a perfect model for human economic, political, and social systems. It does all the things I mentioned before. Using nature as a model, we can end the natural law violations that we're extensively making now, like undervaluing future generations, focusing on growth instead of balance, producing massive amounts of waste, having huge inequality, resulting in major suffering in society. The second systemic change or principle overall is democracy. Democracy is an implied law of nature. Creatures are free to do what they want and reach their fullest potential. So plutocracy, like we have now in the United States, obviously violates the laws of nature. We need to move towards democracy. And probably the most important system change principle for the corporate and financial sector is the rule of law. I studied for many years why it is that companies are forced to harm the environment and society. What are the specific mechanisms? There are many of them, but if you were to roll up all the system flaws, the overarching problem would be the failure to hold companies fully responsible for negative impacts. In competitive markets, this is the mechanism that makes it impossible for companies to voluntarily stop harming the environment and society. So the specific ways that occurs and the specific things that implicitly will have to be addressed to become sustainable are things like limited liability, externalities, which means, polluting and not being held responsible for it. For example, time value of money, an economic concept that says, essentially says that future people and resources are essentially worthless, so it wouldn't be rational to protect them. Dishonest media that misleads people about major issues, focusing on growth instead of balance, not measuring social well-being, and allowing regulated entities to influence regulators. So if the overarching problem is the failure to hold responsible, the overarching system change solution is to hold companies fully responsible. That could be called abiding by the rule of law, which says you're free to do whatever you want as long as you don't hurt anyone. That's a non-debatable point. Companies can't argue that they should be allowed to harm the environment and society, but they do extensively. Under systems that fully enforce the rule of law, companies will maximize profits by fully benefiting and not harming society. Right now, under current systems, companies maximize profit and survive by harming the environment and society. So much of the work that's focused on encouraging companies to do better, they want to do better. No company intends to harm the environment and society, but they're between a rock and a hard place. If they don't put shareholders ahead of the environment, for example, they'll go out of business or the CEO will get fired. So that's a system problem, not a company problem. And that's why non-judgment is a major system change principle. The business and political leaders are good people who mean well, operating in systems that force them to cause harm. Okay, so in terms of the actions needed to implement those systemic changes, again, I'm hugely compressing here, but Actions are needed in all areas of society, including government, the general public, and corporate and financial. Government is important because almost all economic changes involve government change. Only government can enforce the rule of law. Government controls the flow of funds. Right now, we concentrate massive amounts of wealth at the top of society through many types of corporate welfare. That's why 43% of the people in the US can't afford to meet basic needs. We have massive unnecessary suffering. Government can stop that reallocation of public wealth to the top of society and use it to benefit all citizens, as Nordic countries do much better than we do here in the US. Work also is needed in the general public. The people collectively are the most powerful force in society. They could quickly change any business or government if they understood and acted upon their many common interests. But unfortunately, as the US founders well knew, it's easy to divide the people into debating factions, take advantage of tribalism, and make them unable to protect themselves. So actions that are needed to unite citizens and empower them are weaken political parties. That's the primary mechanism for dividing people into debating factions. The US founders, except for Hamilton, hated them. Another one is to require honest media. In the US from 1949 to 1987, companies were required under the Fairness Doctrine to provide both sides of controversial issues, but that limited the ability to mislead the public, so business-controlled government got rid of it. Now media essentially is allowed to lie to people. For example, they can put on a energy company scientist who says climate change isn't real, and half the country comes to believe that they believe, when they believe climate change isn't real, they act in ways that protect shareholders but hurt themselves and their children. One more important area has to do with education. Our current system of competitive grading and standardized curriculums really harms young people. It kind of deadens them. They're constantly monitored. It teaches them that life is boring or work is boring, and fun occurs outside of work. Freedom-based education ends competitive grading and standardized curriculums, and it's well established. It does a much better job of building self-esteem and preparing young people to have successful lives. Okay, and then the one final thing I'll address is, and it's the main thing I focus on, is what is the action needed in the corporate and financial sector? When citizens are divided, these sectors are usually the most powerful segments of society. They strongly influence government, media, and the general public. They're largely controlled by investing. The responsible investing market is huge, over 30 trillion. Almost this entire market is focused on symptoms and company change. And so SCI, as I mentioned, shifts that focus to root causes and system change. It uses investing to engage companies in system change, just like responsible investing has been doing for 20 years, engaging them in sustainability. When investors shift investments based on system change, it encourages companies to implement system change strategies. And the SCI model defines what superior corporate system change performance looks like. And by rating companies on that, it encourages them to implement full system change strategies. Okay, so the approach can help companies to improve sustainability, or it can provide funds that will increase financial returns and provide high sustainability benefits. Funds that are focused on system change have the potential to provide much greater sustainability benefits because they're focusing on root causes. That can help asset managers to increase their assets under management, position themselves as world leaders in this growth market, and provide superior returns. So overall, the SCI is intended to provide a whole system approach and the tools needed to implement sacred economies. And I just wanted to add one thing at the end, since Stephen mentioned it, the monetary system. It's a perfect, and I know Rain is going to talk much more about that. I'm not going to talk about alternative currencies. Just to mention one quick thing, that our current monetary system, the fiat system, is based on allowing the private sector to create the money supply. So that means when government runs a deficit, it borrows money from the private sector, and that's basically why we have a national debt. If we, the people, took back our right to create money, we could have much more funds to fund the SDGs and other important essential social needs like education and infrastructure. We'd have little or no national debt, and we would basically be controlling our financial destiny. It's a private sector money creation like we have now is a form of aristocracy started by Alexander Hamilton in this country, who many said was a monarchist. So anyway, that is transitioning to public sector money creation is one example of a complex systemic change that needs to be implemented through a whole system approach. You couldn't do it in isolation, and the global system change provides the model that provides practical ways to drive that and all other necessary system changes. I know I'm hugely condensing that here, so if people want more information, I'm glad to provide it, but thank you.
Frank, thank you so much for this very in-depth and thorough presentation. I wish we had a lot more time to discuss it, and I'm sure we will create that time to go more in depth, but I wanted to open up to everybody here to ask if anybody had any questions or reflections. And if so, then please, either share your question in the chat box and or ask us to open your mics so that we can.
Can we quit sharing so we can see the whole panel?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
No problem.
There we
There.
go.
Yay. Yeah, there we go. So if you have any questions, please go ahead.
Mari, you were asking in the chat box some very, very good questions. Did Frank touch on some of those questions for you?
Here's that.
Perhaps, but I feel that there's a lot more depth that I would like to go into on those issues. One of which is, I understand that there's this idea of that the system makes it so CEOs are beholden to stockholders. And so therefore they're caught in between a rock and a hard spot. I just want to say that in that way, there's no personal responsibility taken.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, one can always blame any decision on the system itself, rather than coming to a place within oneself that one decides to change and standing up for that personal responsibility. So I feel that that is more of a problem with a domination culture that seeks to profit from the environment. I think that we're not quite, we're going deep, but we need to take it maybe to the next step and look at whether or not the system that is established is in balance and harmony to begin with, rather than making changes upon it when it's not supporting the balance and harmony itself. Mm-hmm. So I would actually like us to go into eventually how to start bringing about a sense of that personal responsibility, rather than coming from a place of satisfying an idea of stockholders, because I think that is a place where one person can go scapegoat out and say, well, I can't do anything because I have this particular responsibility. When are the responsibilities going to shift to a greater picture? Mm-hmm. So
it's that's a perfect example of how complex this issue is. There's so much ground to cover. You've made really excellent points there, and thank you for bringing them up. Typically, vested interests have block change. They go to government, give them money, and say, "Don't hold me responsible." And the typical corporate responsibility paradigm is that I'll act responsibly as long as I can make money, but once I can't make any money anymore, they throw up their hands and say, "Gee, I really don't want to hurt kids," and they don't, but basically I have to because the system demands it. Obviously, that's wrong. Now that's starting to change, and the reason for that is that in a closed system like the Earth, when companies have negative impacts, they come back and hurt them. As the human economy expands, they come back more quickly and hurt them in the form of reputation damage, market share launch. So they're feeling the pain more. That's why they got involved in sustainability 20 years ago. And the reason you're seeing them talking about system change now is they understand that these systems force them to cause harm, and it's no longer a free lunch. That harm comes back and hurts their company more and more. They know that they're going to be better off lowering their impacts, and the only way to do that is to work with others to change systems. So the old model is you do all you can till you lose money. The new model is you do all that, and then at that point you work with others to change the systems that compel you to cause harm. Now, I think another key point here is a sense of urgency. We, throughout human history, almost all high-level change happened quickly because vested interests fight till the end, just like you're talking about, and then bang, it changes quickly. The American and French Revolution, the end of slavery in the US, the end of communism in the USSR. And if you look at what's happening in the world right now, I think we're right in the middle of our systems collapsing. There's a lot of people suffering. We're already hitting the wall. So with that, we can help executives to understand that you don't have the option of keeping the systems the same anymore. They're going to change, and it's going to happen probably very quickly. So your only two options are involuntary change, which means collapse, meaning you might lose everything, perhaps including your life and your family, or voluntary change, where you work with others to try and find ways to go further and change the systems. And because the corporate and financial sectors are so powerful, if we don't find ways to engage them in system change, it's probably not going to happen voluntarily. We're going to hit the wall. And that's why the SCI approach helps them to make more money. Because if we say by doing system change, you'll make more money, it's not really making a deal with the devil, because what we do is they'll make more money in the short term because you're going to be investing in smarter companies. The companies that see the system change is important will get reputation and many other benefits. But what'll happen is they'll come together, work with others, and we'll realize that it's no longer okay to concentrate this wealth at the top of society. So we'll go through a logical process where maybe 10 years from now, the profits and or sooner perhaps, the profits and other things are down, and wealth is equitably distributed as it is in nature. But we've reached that point through a logical process that the companies help to guide themselves. They're better off sitting at the table. I think that's the argument. Whether or not it'll work, I think we need to at least give it a try, because what's the alternative? If we don't try to work with them and they block change, it's going to be very hard to do it on our own until the pain becomes immense, and then it might be kind of tragic. So that's why I support system change investing, and there's just so much here. But thank you for those great points.
I'd just like to say one more super quick thing, that a lot of sustainable, quote, sustainable change is not sustainable at all. And it's like a fake sustainability model that they say, like maybe examples of solar power or different kinds of things where wind turbines aren't truly sustainable and they're polluting just as much or more. And we need to kind of, it makes people quiet down thinking that they're getting something sustainable, and they want to have faith and they think it's all being taken care of, but it's not real. And so when you look at some of these businesses that are supposedly doing this, they're kind of taking us on a false narrative to some degree. And we need to look truly with an eye of honesty as to the real impact of all these different kinds of things.
Well, that's why I think system change is so important. I spent many years analyzing the world's 2,000 largest companies, and they're always pushing the envelope, and none of them is perfect, but they go from bad to not quite as bad. You're right. A lot of these new technologies have problems. A main issue here is so much of the movement is focused on green tech or green investing, but that's still focusing on symptoms. Investing in renewable energy is fine. Investing in green tech is good, but all that'll do is slow the rate of descent. If we don't change the economic and political systems that are forcing companies to create harm, we're not going to get there. So right now, green tech, wind turbines, has to compete with one hand and two legs tied behind its back under our systems that don't internalize costs or hold companies responsible. So once we change the systems, we can step back, and then there'll be an avalanche of green, sustainable technology, ones that aren't having the negative impacts you're talking about, because those will be the most profitable. That's why I think system change is so important. And one other good thing is, so much work looks at all the different SDGs, climate change, and all the different problems. It can seem overwhelming. The good news is it all has the same root cause. Our reductionistic thinking and flawed systems creates all those problems. So when we focus on the root cause solution, system change, it winds up largely solving all the problems. It's super efficient. That's where we have to go if we want to. And it also, if you base it on the laws of nature, we're using original principles. That's what the indigenous say: learn from nature, be guided by it. That's exactly what we're trying to do with this approach. So Mari, thank you for your great comments. I really appreciate them. I know there's lots more that could be said here.
Yes, and I encourage you all to follow up on the conversation and deepen it with Frank outside of the session. This is a beautiful invitation to build relations. Thank you, Frank, so much for your thorough presentation. Thank you for answering the questions. Thank you, Mari, and everybody. And now we're going to move on to the next presenter, which is actually a perfect next thread in the conversation, as we're talking about, we're talking about beautiful human being that I'm going to introduce shortly with her bio, Rain. Rain, welcome in the circle. Thank you for joining us. And also Rain is going to talk about seeds and an initiative in Hypha, talking about the cryptocurrency future. And, we heard a lot about the need for true democracy and what does it really mean in the context of self-determination and the change of our economic system. I think Rain is going to bring us a beautiful part of the puzzle here through Hypha and what they're growing as an organization and their software and system solutions. So with all of that said, Rain, welcome to the circle. I'm going to read out your bio so that everybody can get the full picture of who you are and what brought you to the table. But meanwhile, welcome on board. All right, so Rain is a Reverend. Reverend Dr. Rain Annie Lim is a serial entrepreneur, spiritual leader, speaker, coach, and intuitive healer. She inspires many with her sharing and teaching on the Rain Heart Wisdom Show. With a unique blend of entrepreneurship and spirituality, Rain has inspired thousands of individuals from across the globe on how to live a more soulful and purposeful life by stepping into their fullest expression. Rain created Seeds Leadership and the Facilitator Program, internationally acclaimed transformational programs designed to overcome adversity by breaking free from limiting beliefs and shining a spotlight on our authentic selves to thrive as leaders. An internationally sought after speaker, she has shared the stage with Ariana Huffington, Jack Canfield, Dr. Shane Houston, HRH Queen of Ghana, Dr. Shirini Ibadi, Nobel Peace Prize winner Datuk Paduka Mariana Mahathir, I hope I said that right, Ambassador Anwarul K. Chowdhury, former UN Under-Secretary General and High Representative to the United Nations, Hazel Henderson, and many, many more. I welcome you warm-heartedly, Rain, to our beautiful circle and hand over the speaking staff to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Christiane, and thank you for that. Reading that bio, it felt so different when it's read formally, because I know you, as a sister. And first of all, thank you for having me, Jyoti, here, Christiane at the fountain, and also being here with the other speakers and the audience. I'm really grateful to be given this opportunity to share with you a little bit about seeds. So I'm going to actually just turn on share my screen really quickly. There you go. Could you see the screen? I'm going to just share to present. Is it clear?
Yes, Ren, we can.
Awesome. All righty. So I'm just going to share not too long, because there's a lot that I could talk about, seeds. However, my intention is today to just give you a glimpse of what the platform is about, what our intentions are, and feel free to connect with me after the session. Okay. So basically, seeds, our intention is to create this new financial and economic system, which is governed by the people. So kind of, Frank, you were talking about creating a systemic change. So this is one of our experiment. Our intention is to create this through the Seeds platform. So Seeds is about also providing tools and how to co-create a thriving world together. And it is designed to be equitable for the people. And the key is actually, we are focused a lot on how to regenerate our planet. So when we talk about regenerative, we're also not talking just the planet as in Mother Earth, but also human being as a whole, right? SEEDS also stands for an acronym. So it stands for, the first S is sowing, equitable, ecological, decentralized society. So that's what SEEDS stands for. And SEEDS is also the name of the currency that we are creating right now. Kind of like any currency in the world. So the difference is the currency name is SEEDS with a capital S. That's the difference. All right. Like I mentioned, so the intention is to provide tools to support you as an individual, businesses, movement in the world to regenerate our planet and to encourage collaboration and cooperation and community building. And how are we doing that? First of all, it is a cryptocurrency. So we call it a conscious cryptocurrency. Right, so because what our intention is to bring more consciousness to the world through this platform. And as you know, it's a cryptocurrency, basically is also a payment platform, like PayPal and the other platform that other crypto like Bitcoin or PayPal as a payment platform. The difference is with Seeds, it's a no transaction fee platform. So first of all, if you choose not to participate in the governance or even to develop the financial system with us, you could actually use this platform for free. There's no fees, no cost for you to conduct any transaction right now. It's a free to use platform. In fact, we call it a better than cash, a better than free platform. And I'll share with you a little bit later, what does it mean by better than free? Secondly, as I mentioned just now really briefly, our intention is to create a whole entire new financial system. Currently a lot of, and Frank talked about this already, right? Our current financial system is really it's a debt-based system. And it's also it's degenerating our planet. We as the citizens of the world, the planet, we don't get to say or tell where the funds is going, right? We see, funds that are decided by governments are going to projects, for example, the oil and gas industry, deforestation projects, they're degenerating the planet. So part of SEED's intention when it was developed was, how can we create a platform that's very intentional to regenerate and heal our planet at the same time? And so how are we doing this? Well, first of all, we, through the SEED platform, any organization or individual, if you have a project that's regenerative to the planet or humanity, you're welcome to submit what we call a campaign proposal. Put into our platform saying, this is a project that we have and how it's going to regenerate the planet. And the citizens of SEEDS get to vote and decide, okay, this is a project that we feel it's in alignment with our intention. It is really regenerating our planet. And once they vote for it, the proposal passed and will be rewarded with seeds. It's kind of like a grant. So you'll be rewarded with seeds that you can actually utilize to regenerate a planet. So for example, this particular image that I have is one of the campaign proposals that was passed a few months ago, or maybe almost a year already right now. It's by Forests Without Frontiers. And what the intention was, they created a donation platform. Anybody who actually donate fiat currency, so $20 if you donate, you will be rewarded with 2,000 seeds. And when you donate the $20 to them, they are planting trees around the world. So basically, by them planting trees around the world, they are regenerating the planet. And therefore, when they submitted the proposal, it was passed, and they were rewarded with seeds. Then they can distribute to every donors who supported their project. So that's one example. Another proposal that came through. There's actually a lot. We probably right now already had a couple hundred, almost a couple hundred projects that's gone through. So this is another project. This is actually my project. I created, and I have an event that we run yearly. It's called Luminate. And through this project, our intention is to provide free education, right, to the world. So this is more related to entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. And so when I submitted this proposal to the Seeds platform, basically the citizen voted for it and said, yes, we want to support more of this kind of work in the world. And what happened was, once the proposal passed, every speaker that was on my platform were rewarded with 999 seeds, which they can use. And all the participants who joined my event were gifted 111 seats for their participation. So this way, we're distributing seats out to the world through the campaign proposal. Of course, the fountain. So I decided to put this into my proposal today. So for Fountain has also, is one of our alliance, right, to seeds. Basically, the Fountain submitted a alliance grant proposal a couple of months ago to be an alliance to seeds. And therefore, I'm really grateful again to be invited today to share more about seeds. And as you can see, in the alliance grant that was voted through by the citizens of seeds, the Fountain's intention is to actually bridge between, what are the existing cryptocurrency platform that's available in the indigenous community to what we are doing right now with seeds. So part of the funds that are requested, you can see the breakdown is, how to do some research around it and then do the bridging around it. And in addition, part of the funds too will also be to support the staff and volunteer who are doing those work. All right. And we have another alliance that I believe was also here at the event yesterday. Walter and Susan shared about their project in Vilcabamba in Ecuador, right, Finca Sagrada. And so they too, it's one of our alliance right now for in seeds. Basically, actually, they have 3 alliance proposal that has passed. This is one of them. So they requested funds to actually kickstart their new initiative called the Kinship Earth, not-for-profit organization. A part of the funds that they requested was to also build a small retreat and learning center. We're in Finca Sagrada. In addition, also to support them in managing and running the center as well, as you can see. And part of also the seeds that they requested was also to write a book, right, on the local flora and to use that as an educational tool for the community. So this is one way seeds is supporting to regenerate the planet. Basically, any organization or any individual has a project that is regenerative to the planet, or actually to humanity, human being and all beings, you're welcome to submit a campaign proposal and an alliance proposal, and it will be voted by the citizens. And when it's voted through, you will be given those grants, which is seeds, to utilize. So that's one way. The other way that we're shifting and changing the financial system is, as I mentioned already, a lot of the projects right now in the world, we don't get a say. We actually need to stage protests to stop something. But here in this financial system, as a citizen of seeds, you'll have a voice to decide which projects are worthy to receive those funds. Being a citizen of seeds. Yeah, so, okay. And seeds is owned by nobody. It's developed by an organization, or I would say it's actually not a formal organization anymore. It used to be, but right now it's a group of individuals who came together, and the entity is called Hypha. So Hypha developed and conceptualized this idea, seeds, because we knew the problems that we were facing and knew we needed to do something. And so therefore seeds was birthed. And it's not been owned by anybody. At this moment, the tool is not owned by anybody. It's actually owned by the citizens, okay? And it's designed for everybody. So anyone can come in and join us. Right now, you will need an invitation to join this platform. So as you can see, we have seats is now in about 88 plus countries around the world. We have, the numbers has changed. Right now, we have about 5,500 regenerators in the world right now. We have almost close to 250 citizens already. And we have about 450 organizations who are in partnership with us currently. Where are some of the countries that we are creating some impact at the moment? In Guatemala, actually Guatemala is one of our very key area that we're focusing on. We have a lot of, they have currently created some within local circular economy already. You can actually pay and buy cacao with seeds in Guatemala. So we're seeing some of this in action. It's happening in the world, in Ecuador, as I've mentioned. We also have a pretty strong root right now in Zimbabwe, Sweden, which is a project initiated by Original Voice Trust. We are also in Liechtenstein, Costa Rica. I'm bringing the project to Malaysia because I'm previously from Malaysia, now residing in Toronto, Canada, and many more countries. So we are well aware that, you know, whatever we've developed, we're in an experimental stage right now. So we're also learning from all these different countries where we're harvesting the learning from them, you know, what's working, what's not working, and continuously adapting the seeds platform. So one last thing, because I'm mindful of the time that I have. So it's a very short presentation. There's a lot more that I can go into detail about the tokenomics, but I won't go into today. Okay, one thing I do want to highlight specifically. So how do you join seeds? Right now we have an app. It's called the Global Seeds Passport app. You will need an invitation to join this platform. And to be able to propose a proposal, it's also through this app, you can submit a proposal, and the voting is also done through this app. So as a citizen, you know, anyone who has evolved from a visitor to a citizen, you get to vote through this app as well. One key thing that I want to highlight from this app is this is also the reason why I decided to jump in to contribute to Hypha and to develop the Seeds platform and the Seeds community. It's because of some of the things that they're built in. I personally didn't like what was happening in the crypto world, especially there's a lot of speculation going on, even though it's a new technology, but it's very speculative. There's a lot of old behavior, old paradigm way of operating still showing up in the current crypto world. And this is the piece where I appreciate what Seeds has done. You'll notice on the screen, it says 99 contribution score. Seeds, the way you earn your voice token, which is your voting token, is based on how much you contribute. It's not based on how much money you have, how much wealth you have. It's how much you're contributing to the ecosystem. It's how, therefore, determines through an algorithm your contribution score, which then relates to how many tokens that you have, your voice token to vote for proposal. So that's one. Secondly, there is something called the Harvest Protocol. You know, we have all heard about the universal basic income. Here in Seeds, we call it the universal earned income. As you all know, you know, in a circular economy, the more we create, we add value in the economy, the more we actually create more value in the economy, right? And the way that's going to be distributed is through the Harvest Protocol. And once again, it's not distributed kind of like in our current world where, you know, we're seeing the gap of the rich and the poor. It's growing bigger because the wealthies have the capacity to make more money. Here, it's based on your contribution. So the Harvest Protocol will be released based on how much you contribute to this ecosystem. So that's why it's called a universal earned income, earned in the sense of your contribution to the community and to the ecosystem. And this is part of the reason I was very excited when I decided to join this community and also engage in supporting and contributing as much as I can. because of some of this mechanism that they thought about to create a more equitable platform for all. So that's based, oh yeah, and one more thing, right now we're also developing new tools as well to support organization. They are not fully available yet, but we're also creating widgets for payment, like QR codes, stickers, automated invites. They're all coming very soon to support organizations to onboard their community and businesses to be able to use this as their payment platform. And then I think that is it. So it's a quick, short presentation, and I'm open to question. Thank you, everybody.
Amazing presentation, Brain. Thank you so much. Yeah, you went through like a Speedy Gonzalez. Thank you so much.
Make sure that I finish everything I could in 15 minutes.
I know, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much, Rain, and that's only a very small part of your beautiful, rich life. So thank you so much for sharing seats in Hypha. And we're going to open up now for 2 minutes only, because we're running a little short in time, and we're going to flow into a beautiful pre-recorded panel conversation that was as part of the Sacred Economic Summit last year. But before we do that, we want to open up to another round of questions. So please raise your hands so that we can unmute you or share your question in the chat box. Stephen, yes.
Yeah, hi. Hi, Rain. Thank you so much. You've become such a wonderful ambassador for Seeds. I'm a little bit familiar with Seeds. I'm a resident, on the way to become a citizen. I would love to talk to you at some point about Madagascar and see how we can put that in as a proposal. And I was wondering if you could comment briefly on the constitution of Seeds, because I've been following that closely, and I know Anneloes Smitsman was very much involved. And I think that's really, as a living constitution, as an example for companies, for nations, for organizations, it is something that is being seeded in Seeds as well that is really important.
Thank you, Stephen. Yes, mindful of time too. There's a lot in the Constitution, so I won't talk about the Constitution itself, but I'll talk about the philosophy behind that. Actually, right now in the app, we are voting a referendum on the Constitution. So we had our first version that got through, that the citizens had voted, and we decided that we needed to improve it. And this is where Anneloes came in and really supported. It included a lot of her work into the new Constitution right now. So there's a referendum for voting by the citizen to make some of the changes. As we noticed, like I said, it's still in a very experimental stage. So as we learn what's working, what's not, what else do we need to add in, we continuously include this learning in and continues to change it. And that's the beauty of it too. And that's where I feel why I'm excited about it, because I, as a citizen, have a voice to voice out what's missing, what we need, or what else we need to correct or improve in the Constitution, put it through a referendum, and then get voted through by the citizen. And I have a voice to say, no, this is not the direction we want to go. That's pretty much more of it. And I could have a voice and say, no, we're not heading that direction, and vote down that Constitution. However, if you want to know more about the Constitution, I go to joinseeds.earth or joinseeds.com. There'll be a link to actually read about the Constitution.
And Rain, we have a question over here about how they can get an invitation and get more involved. Could you put in the chat what would be the right link for them to go to?
Yes, I'm going to share with you my email. Feel free to email with me, because we need to actually send a private, a special invitation to invite you to join the platform. And that's also part of the reason I love this platform, because, we're building the platform. First of all, crypto, yes, is built on trust, but at the same time, we're inviting individuals that we know, so onto the platform, which continues to build on trust, right? So yes, I will put in my email, and please send me an email. I'll be happy to send you an invite.
Thank you. And I would also suggest that our other speakers put something in the chat too, in case others here would like to to get in touch with you and continue their conversation. Thank you.
So are there any more questions for Rain now that we still have her with us? Thank you, Rain, for sharing your email with us. That's beautiful. And also feel free to share your website link so people can go and look up your work. And Frank, I invite you to also share the link to Global Systems Change so that folks can download the books. And Stephen, likewise for you, Philanthropy for Life. I know there's websites out there that you could share with us. So thank you for that. And,
I had one question if there's time.
Yes, for sure, Frank. Please go ahead.
I'll put those links in a minute, but Rain, I'm familiar with Seed's work a little bit from speaking with Stephen and participating on some of the calls. But one of the things I was wondering about is that you're obviously doing great work. I love the decentralized concept. Is there a vision of a sustainable world that's guiding Seeds and the specific actions needed to get there so that you focus your efforts on the ones that are, objectively essential to get to the end point? Or is it more of a broader approach where things that are making a positive difference in the world are getting supported?
At the moment, it's more of a broader approach because we're also wanting to give the space for ideas and concept. At the same time, I think the Constitution is where it's guiding us with the principles right now. So where that, the Constitution provides that guidance of the principle we're using, what we're considering regenerative. At the same time, there's also this space of freedom of expression. We want to bring, individuals to bring their creativity into this platform because we're still, I would say, young. The app was launched in November 2019, so we're 1 year-ish old in terms of what's available. Of course, Hypha itself, this whole idea conceptualized since 2017. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for your great work.
I was muted here. Thank you, Frank, for this question. And thank you, Rain, for being with us and sharing all of your amazing work on Seeds in Hypha. And now we were going to have Ulrich John with us, the founder of the Original Voice Trust, and dear Alexis Bunten from Bioneers. We're sending you both blessings by the time you get to listen to this recording. We hope that you enjoyed, but unfortunately not all presenters are able to be present with us today. So we're going to fast forward our beautiful program together and are going to jump into a pre-recorded panel conversation that was extraordinary as part of the Sacred Economic Summit, recorded in November 2020, which the Fountain produced for an ecosystem of 50+ partners and organizations in order to accelerate our collaboration. And the panelists include Charles Eisenstein, Alexis Bunten, who's not with us right now, Franz Josef Allmeyer from Seeds, that's the initiative that Rain just presented, Christopher Lindström, and Lorana Scarpioni from Time Bank. And we wish you a wonderful time watching this panel presentation. And then we're going to be back and take the next steps with Grandmother Jyoti Ma in a beautiful meditation to close our circle together. So Margine, I would like to ask you to share the panel conversation. Thank you.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Sacred Economic Summit. It is again an honor to be amongst this emerging ecosystem of incredible collaborators. We begin each week restating the intention of this summit. We are here with open minds and hearts to remember how to be in harmony and in right relations with all life to support the emergence of a global economy based on reciprocity, guided by nature, in service to the sacred. Over our 9-week learning journey, we aspire to a new level of coherence as an ecosystem, to align our collaborations in service to this goal. Under all systems lives a bedrock, which is the earth that sustains us and the life that moves through us. By listening to its wisdom, we endeavor to co-create the most beautiful world possible. Today, we are discussing the foundational principles of sacred economics and how their applications are playing a critical role in the global transformation. I am honored to be here with these panelists who have dedicated their lives to being practitioners of this work. Alexis Bunten is UPIC, a senior advisor at JumpScale, co-founder of the Rights of Nature Economic Framework, co-director of the Bioneers Indigeneity Program, and a delegate of the Mother Earth Delegation of United Original Nations. Charles Eisenstein is a thought leader and an author of several groundbreaking books, including Sacred Economics. Lahana Scarpioni is the founder of Believe and the world's largest time bank, the head of Social Bank International as well. Franz Allmeyer is the co-creator of Seeds Conscious Currency. Christopher Lindstrom is the founder of Cycle Effect and is representing Investment Community Visibility, or also known as ICV. So we will begin our time by each panelist briefly introducing themselves, the core principles of sacred economics from their perspective, and how these principles have been applied in their work and the market. We will begin with Alexis. Thank you so much, Alexis.
Good morning, everyone. And I'm glad to go first because you all are so amazing that I didn't want to follow any of you. So I'm really, really excited to be here with all of you. And I am zooming in today from the ancestral territory of the Ramzan Ohlone, now known as Monterey, California, where I had life brought me here, I suppose. And just wanted to acknowledge that before we start. And a little bit about me. I've already had a nice introduction, but I am Yupik and also Unangan, which is from the Aleutian Island chain, and also daughter of immigrants from Sweden to the US. But being born Alaska Native, I was raised with a lot of these values. And over time, I've worked for many tribal businesses, corporations, consulted for them, wrote a PhD on it. I've taught economics, taught development, more like critiqued it at the university level. And as Amelia said, co-direct the indigeneity program at Bioneers and advise at JumpScale. And at JumpScale, we have developed projects on a rights of nature-based economic framework, as Amelia mentioned, which I'll talk about later, but also a regenerative land platform and for businesses and investors to respond to what's going on in the planet today. And we also see COVID-19 as an opportunity to shift. And if you're not familiar with Bioneers, in my program, we amplify Indigenous voices and sharing Indigenous knowledge with full, free, prior, and informed consent, of course, to address basically the biggest social and environmental problems of our time. And I'm particularly interested in helping non-native allies to re-indigenize through education and programming. We also have a catalytic, massive initiative we're working on around building capacity for a tribal-led rights of nature movement in the United States. So check out our website and keep an eye out for that. And a conference coming up in December 5th and 6th and 12th and 13th. And it's going to be really, really great. So come join all of us. So I want to get right into the core principles of sacred economics. From my perspective, I can only speak for myself. And first of all, I just want to point out that I don't say capitalism anymore. Like many of my friends and colleagues, we say colonial capitalism because it's hand in hand, colonization and capitalism. And colonial capitalism is insanity. We are absolutely killing ourselves with it. If any of you are fans of the Alice in Wonderland books, you may remember the scene with the Red Queen when they were on the chessboard and the Red Queen had Alice and they kept running and running and running. And she kept saying on the chessboard, Alice to the Queen, why do we keep running? We're not getting anywhere. And she said, you have to run to not get anywhere. And that's literally what capitalism is. Capitalism as it currently stands is by definition immoral. It's based in natural resource extraction. It's based in exploitation and accumulation of wealth. It's built on lies, like the idea that the economy fixes itself, that trickle-down principles will work. It simply does not happen. And we see all sociopathy, if that's how you say it. There have been estimates that 1 out of every 5 CEOs is a bona fide sociopath, because that's what capitalism breeds in order to be successful. And within that, the green economy has been a good start, but it's still flawed because it embraces colonial capitalism. Everyone needs to decolonize in order to get out of the mess we're in right now. And of course, Indigenous peoples, we need to protect our remaining biodiversity. And we hold the knowledge of how to live as a part of nature instead of apart from nature and above nature. It was nature first and people came last. So some of the ideas I have around this are that we need to begin to transition to what I call an indigenous capitalism. So it's a form of capitalism that integrates indigenous ways of knowing and values into economic activity. So these might be valid, and I'll talk more about this. Some of these values might include things like relatedness, obeying natural law, putting nature first, knowing that we are not in control of nature, operating from a 7th generation perspective, thinking about generations to come in the future, and just some examples of Indigenous values. And I really came to this thinking about this because I'm a shareholder in an Alaska Native corporation, and I grew up with that. And I did a deep dive look into Indigenous-led corporations some time ago. Now they do have a funny origin, because they were basically created out of land claim settlements in Anglo-settler colonial nation states. That's a mouthful. US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And we only got reparations and rights to our lands back when there was basically oil and subsurface resources in these countries, and they had to legally get it on the books so that they could do natural resource extraction that's killing our planet now. And as part of these laws, they incorporated us, also a form of assimilation, but we've been able to take that power and that finance and put our own values to play in our corporations that have actually helped us to come up with amazing, innovative ways to engage in transforming our economy. And my corporation is actually, I think, one of the most successful corporations in all of Alaska, because we work from values first and our relationship with the land and the watershed in Bristol Bay, Alaska. So just a couple of Indigenous values that I've seen really support this idea are things like respect. So promoting respectful cross-cultural exchanges between businesses, between networks. Another one is reciprocity, recognizing the real value of Indigenous cultures, lands, and worldviews, giving back to communities, practicing fairness. Relationship is a huge value. That would be like understanding the obligations we have to each other, to land, to all things on the planet that do have a life force. All living things are animate. I can't translate the word for it in Yupik into English, but you may know that many Indigenous communities, we think of all things as related, and all the things that in the mainstream view you might think of as inanimate or not a part of you, or not to be thought of, like a rock. It does have something in it, and it's just as important. So another aspect of relationship is obviously putting nature and relationships over money, taking time to build relationships, listening and learning before acting. If you want to learn more, I wrote an article that introduces some of this in 2011 about a call to Indigenous capitalisms, I think it's called. So there's also lots of practical examples. I'll share one before I pass it off to Charles, of how an Indigenous-led economy can can really help all of us if we follow these examples. So one example is in the tribes are leading in the development of cryptocurrency for the development of security and utility coins. So my friend, who's a principal at BCCG Crypto, that is using blockchain technology for this. One of the tribes they're working with is the first to be approved by the SEC to develop and register a security in the US. And in their R&D, they have actively worked in the rights of nature into a sacred and moral economy so that nature comes to the table as a decision maker and as a beneficiary in trades. And now it's not an exact perfect fit between indigenous concepts of nature and economy when we put it into the mainstream Western economy. So we're still working out the fit, but typically the best. One thing I will say is that with this company and many others, you know, when we get together to think about it, we do start with communities, leaders do start with prayer, and they do start in their own language, and then we try to translate it into the mainstream economy. So I'm going to stop right there and pass it on.
Thank you so much, Alexis. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Now I'm going to pass it over to Charles. Thank you so much, Charles.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, really honored to be here. My personal background isn't nearly as interesting as Alexis's or probably anybody else's, so maybe I'll go straight to the core of what I think sacred economics is. I was really when Alexis was talking about 1 out of 5 CEOs are thought to be sociopaths, I thought, in a way, the economy that we live in turns everybody into sociopaths. Every time that we comparison shop, the basic mentality is, I'm going to get the best deal for me. And you know, like, I'm not going to necessarily worry about if this product provider is offering a more expensive product because they're taking better care of their employees. And like, I don't necessarily do that. And that's pretty sociopathic. Like, I don't care about anybody else, just the best for me. And it's not because any of us are evil, but it's because of the structure of the economy. So a sacred economy would be one where we don't have to fight the economic structure and the values that it imposes in order to serve that which is becoming sacred to us, or that which is sacred to us. In a perverse way, the current economic system does serve what had been sacred to civilization, which was the conquest of nature, which was the cult of the individual. The money system that we've inherited serves those things very well. But now we are going through an awakening where we are opening to some of the things Alexis was talking about, the beingness of all beings in nature and of the planet itself, and our inseparability from those. So we're no longer resonating with the values that are encoded in the economic system we've inherited. And that's, for me, that was the core motivation of trying to articulate, well, what would an economics look like that were sacred, that were aligned with what we're really starting to care about as the program of development, of progress, of ascent, of conquest disintegrates around us. The current COVID crisis, I think, is part of this disintegration that is really landing home that something that we're doing isn't working anymore. I could go a lot more into that, but I'm just going to leave it at that and just say that so sacred economics, there's this systemic aspect. How do we change the system, or what would a system look like that is no longer colonial capitalism, but and I'm not going to say post-capitalism, but I would say that because capitalism, the nature of capitalism depends on the nature of capital, which itself is a system of agreements among humans, what would it look like if we changed those agreements into resonance with what is sacred? So that's the one aspect. And the other aspect is, how do we personally live into this? How do we, in the context of an economy that is always pressuring us to, and this isn't just like, oh, I'm a sociopath, so I'm going to get the best deal for me. I mean, for most people, this is, I cannot afford to think about, you know, the fair wages or the environmental effects of this cheaper product. So given this context, and even CEOs are subject to it. You know, if I source my components from a more ethical source, then what's going to happen to my profit margins? How am I going to make the bond payments? You know, what is the board of directors going to say, who represent institutional investors like pension funds who need to get a certain return on capital? Like everyone is stuck in this system. So the other question of sacred economics is, how do we live into what we are now embracing as sacred in an economy that pushes us the other direction? What is the natural next step, or the audacious next step that still makes sense in current circumstances? So that's what sacred economics is to me, or part of it anyway. And I will turn it back to you.
Thank you so
Amelia,
much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Charles. We'll get into more detail as we go on, but thank you so much for those thoughts. And now I pass it over to Lahana. Thank you so much, Lahana.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity too. I'm really grateful for having this conversation, because it's sometimes a conversation that I'm having with myself since really young. I was born in Brazil, and part of my story of how I got to help creating a sacred economic is because I saw inequality really from the start of my life. I grew up in the south of Brazil, but my family is from Northeast, and they are very two different realities in terms of, like, even though my family was a low middle class in the south, in the Northeast, I was probably the kid with more opportunities, with more support that I knew on my vacation time. And for me, that never made much sense, to see how much it didn't matter your hard work. It didn't matter how like a good of a daughter or kid you are just like, you don't have the same opportunities, you know, people were excluded. And that made me feel like, why that, or why people are making decisions in terms of which career they are going to do, because it makes more money, because money is the way that we need to design our lives to feel safe in a way. So my passion in creating Believe, my first businesses, is basically how can we express human value in an equal and abundant way through a currency that really recognizes that value. And the way I found in a sacred expression was through time as a currency, understanding that if there is one thing that waves us together in this reality, in time and space, is time. Every human being in the world has a deposit of 24 hours to do what they want to do or need to do. And this might be the only equal opportunity we have. But because the current economy doesn't value the time of people equally, we don't get that side of, okay, what can I do with my time? Even though the time a mom spends taking care of a child, it's as valuable to the society to function as the PhD who wrote an article that was really recognized, you know? So for me, Believe is basically a time bank. I was inspired by the work of Time Banks USA and other time banks when I was 21 and was watching documentaries about the financial system. I think one of the things that really pissed me off was the way money was made. So organics and financial system was my favorite documentaries, and how money is based on that, and the virtual scarcity that is created out of that system. So the way I expressed that was through an online platform where people trade skills using time as a and 1 hour teaching me English, you get a time credit, and then you can exchange for someone to fix your computer, help with finances, do any kind of service that you feel like it's valuable to you. And I think through this journey, 8 years making believe and believing in many ways, I take 3 main principles, which I feel like is the sacred economy for me. The first principle is equality. For me, it's very important for us to understand that we are not equal in terms of, we are very different and unique, and that's amazing. It's what makes us who we are as human beings, but we have equal value, independently of the linear way that we see each other. So I am a worker, I am a mom, I am an unemployed person. So society labels that you have this value, you have this value, you have this value. But if you look at nature, if you look at sacred systems, or like the way that we are interconnected, there's no, oh, you are more valuable than I. We, each one of us have a role to play that cannot be expressed by our human intelligence, because the beauty of sacredness is that we recognize that there are things that we are part of a bigger wave or chain link, which we just need to recognize that I don't know what the years know or what the centuries will know, but I recognize that this person in this moment has equal value and play a role. That's why they are here. So creating financial systems that recognize equality, this equal human value, are important and are sacred. The second value, I believe, is abundance. It's really to understand that we are not in a scarce reality, even though we were so like trained to see that way, to see ourselves as, I need to grant that I'm gonna eat the next meal, or that if the economy goes bad, I have some savings. So this scarcity, it is something that our system and the current economy designed. But if we look around, abundance is real when we have an economy that supports human connection. Think about, I remember traveling in Europe and staying in my friends' houses, and I was just like, wow, I'm living such an abundant life, even though I didn't have much money to like stay on nice hotels. But I was staying in amazing houses in an abundant way, because I had the trust that they were opening their house. So if we think about, if every human being trusts each other, we would have so much abundance. We could assess each other's resources and really be able to live that. So I really believe we are not living a crisis of resources. We are living a crisis of trust. The moment we go back into trust, abundance is just the flow of life. Because if you look to any sunset, any forest, anything that is really sacred, it's abundant. It's not like dying, oh my God, let me go for it. Humans interacted with it, make it scarce. So that's how we see, but some systems, but it's just not natural. And the third one and last one, I believe, is reciprocity, is the never ending flow of this. And if you look at everything, to the molecule, to the animals, to a tree, there is a torus field of giving and receiving. Think about a tree. There is the roots receiving from the earth, receiving the nutrients, and then the fruit or the leaves are giving. So that flow of giving and receiving is the flow of life, is the flow of the sacred. Is there's a moment that I need to give love, there's a moment that I need to receive love, there's a moment that I need to give my energy, there's a moment that I need to receive energy. And that reciprocity creates the spiral up that consciousness, humanity can really use economy as the flow of that energy. But if the reciprocity doesn't happen, it just shrinks. It is not there, you know. So for me, the three principles are those, and reciprocity plays a very important role in my experience with time banking, because the time currency is precisely that. It goes back to zero. Like if I give you an hour and you give me 1 hour of your time, so we ended up with nothing in terms of like stored money. Of that interaction created value. The reciprocity of me giving and receiving now it will take me to a new level of just expression of myself and us as a society.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you so much, Lahana. Thank you for sharing. Now I pass it over to Franz. Thank you so much, Franz.
Thank you, everyone. So good to be here with you all, especially in this beautiful times of transitions. It's such a wonderful time to share this space with like-minded individuals like us. And for me, it's also an honor to be here today sharing my perspectives, and also wonderful and grateful to hear your unique perspectives. My name is Franz Allmaier, currently out of Vaduz, Liechtenstein. I am a global citizen and at the same time a citizen of seeds. My cultural roots are between Austria and Guatemala, so I resonate a lot with what Lorana was saying in terms of these different perspectives and the journey of witnessing inequalities and pain across different cultures is something that has been in my journey for quite some time. And this contrasting and complementary perspectives have allowed me to question existing cultural paradigms built on scarcity from an early age. In this journey, I've dedicated my career to the fields of innovation and global development, and I have gathered transdisciplinary and cross-sectoral experience working across the board in international organizations, with governments, with the private sector, NGOs, academia, etc., etc. This long journey has also allowed me to recognize pervading patterns and also embrace a whole systems approach to development that more effectively provides value to the entire system. And the organization that I am part of, or better yet stated, the organism that I am part of, is called Hypha. And Hypha is the name for a single hair that makes up a mycelial web. And these webs are how healthy ecosystems transmit knowledge and resources across time and space. Hypha, as an organization or organism, is here to serve and unite movements and nations and peoples to co-create on a global civilization towards a shared purpose. And essentially, we are a group of dedicated individuals coming together with a deep and committed and purposeful vision that together we build and facilitate tools for humanity's transition towards a global, regenerative, and thriving civilization. And within this tool set of tools that we're creating, we have SEEDS, which stands for Sowing Equitable and Ecological Decentralized Societies. It is a regenerative financial system for a thriving global society. And what we're doing is cultivating a movement that aligns radical empowerment of purpose with finance. And our mission is to bring about a modern day renaissance. In the sacred economic principles, we acknowledge that an economy should cater for all life without leaving anyone or anything behind, with the understanding also that human activity should enhance the environment and the community by providing benefits to everyone and not just a few. such an economy is definitely shaped by cooperation and not limited by geopolitics, but involves a shared sense of responsibility towards the biosphere as a whole. And we, as mentioned before, are inspired by nature, especially the mycelial networks that are able to sustain complex ecosystems. And here, like the mycelial network, we connect people and organizations in ways that are able to generate and distribute value more effectively, benefiting the well-being of the entire system. And we are an open source, decentralized, citizen-governed, and evolved financial system that aims to redefine what currency can do for society. And what we were able to do is that the creation of seeds, which are the currency of the seeds ecosystem, is done algorithmically through transparent protocols, which allows us to create as much currency as there is demand for exchange within an economy. And what this does is eliminates artificial scarcity from a system, which is able to reverse the trend of inequality and concentration of power of today's dominant systems. And we've made it as easy as downloading an app and are therefore offering a compelling alternative to the current system. And I deeply believe that the real promise of the digital age is to transition us away from a monoculture of induced scarcity, of induced fear, of induced separation, which are essentially imposing over all forms of diversity, both cultural as well as biological. But the good thing is that we now have the tools and technological capacity to empower and scale our innate ability to cooperate and exchange with one another, enabling all of us to converge around bioregional economies of unprecedented abundance, which really reflect the natural reality of our nature around us. So the dialectics for me are, for example, centralization versus decentralization, are scarcity versus abundance, degeneration versus regeneration, fragmentation versus integrity, or polarization versus unity. And the reality is that we are currently immersed in a fragmented system of induced scarcity, and that has been done for generations. And in that state of consciousness, we confuse what is with what is not very easily. And really only by addressing this can we start moving forward towards a shared vision of change and transcend the cultural conditioning that keeps humanity under the illusion of separation. For example, investments cannot be considered as such if they negatively impact the systemic integrity of the biosphere that we collectively share. Investments supporting and accelerating the adoption of regenerative practices, which are currently lost in market failures, require an economy that reflects their true holistic value. Capital therefore needs to be measured and understood in its full dimension in order to include all forms of capital and not be myopically reduced to include only financial capital. And as we all know here, that at the very root of our planetary and human condition is shaped essentially by our financial systems. And in today's default economy, currency is centrally created, which means that we have a handful of people choosing what value is for the rest of the planet. And it's created out of debt and interest. So for every cent of any fiat currency that we used, we have debt and interest attached to it. And this debt-based form of money is distributed through trickle-down economics, in which money should be trickling down to all levels of society, from the top of the pyramid to the bottom. But in reality, we know that that doesn't really happen. So if we are to change the trajectory of humanity, we also need to evolve those systems. And what we do with seeds in order to transmute the shortfalls of trickle-down economics and debt-based currency, we equitably are able to distribute value generated from a robust circulatory flow of currency directly into the accounts of people and organizations that are contributing towards the growth and maintenance of a healthy economy, community, society, and therefore support and accelerate the adoption of regenerative practices, which are otherwise lost in market failures of anthropocenic proportions. And this in itself mimics the holistic qualities for exchanging value, and at the same time enables a co-creative, really grassroots and globally scalable effort that is able to truly align purpose with finance. And in this new way of doing things, now the most beneficial thing for the environment is also the most beneficial thing for your economy. And another big aspect of how we differ with the current financial system is how seeds are generated. So essentially in any natural system, the circulatory flow of current is the best measure of well-being. You can see that in a river or in your vascular system. In the economy, the same rules apply. But unfortunately today, dominating constructs reward stagnation, which therefore result in systemic disease. But the beautiful thing is now we have blockchain, for example, which allows us to track the velocity or the circulatory flow of currency in real time. And through this, we can, for the first time in human history, algorithmically balance the supply of currency to meet the demand of currency over time, which again removes this artificial scarcity, which are impregnated in all our civilization, essentially, based on our financial systems. And this is replaced by transparent protocols, which ensure that we have exactly as much currency as we need to exchange. Therefore, no more inflation and no more deflation or depression. Seeds are simply created to replace destroyed seeds or to meet new demand. And what that entails is, as we have supply-demand homeostasis, we now have intrinsic stability in an economy or in a currency, which allows seeds to become a superior and appreciating unit of accounting over fiat currency. For example, the US dollar, which loses around 15% every year, and alternatives such as Bitcoin, which are plagued with extreme volatility or concentration of wealth and unsustainable energy consumption. And in this context, we are really putting forth a tool that attracts both small scale and large scale funding that rewards Earth stewards as well as investors who are seeking a more stable currency in a sustainable ecosystem. And one more thing that I want to say is how are seeds distributed, because that's also how currently, as I mentioned, trickle-down economics doesn't work. We are able to distribute seeds using what we call the harvest. And seeds is, in other words, the exact opposite of trickle-down economics, as the harvest is distributed directly into the accounts of people and organizations contributing to the growth and maintenance of a healthy economy, or a healthy community, or a healthy ecology. And based on the contribution score, so how much you are contributing to this well-being, you're also receiving a share of the harvest. And the harvest is essentially the aggregate sum of the collective efforts, which increases when the seeds economy is thriving. And what this does is aligns our financial interests together. And this is precisely the mechanism or the mechanic that unites our financial interests to reward and encourage cooperation towards a favorable transition for all of us. And this model essentially creates a series of positive feedback loops aimed for growth, for ecological regeneration, for equality, and, for example, the creation of local food systems and resilient communities. Yeah, and with that, I pass it back to Emilia.
Thank you so much, Franz. That's a really beautiful work that you're doing. Thank you so much for that. Now I pass it over to Christopher Lindstrom. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Amelia. Thanks for inviting me on this call. And, so it's an honor to be speaking amongst the rest of you. thank you everyone for what you're doing. I love hearing about the work of fellow regenerators and sacred economists. Yeah, I was just going to talk a little bit about my work with investing in regenerative agriculture, and why I believe regenerative agriculture is so critical to the transitioning this world from the extractive world that we've been trapped in, and moving into a world that is truly built upon the foundation of the sacred, of the principle of regeneration, the principle of reuniting with the community of life, and remembering ourselves as a part of the whole that is life, rather than being kind of trapped in this somewhat adolescent stage of human development, where we feel this kind of false privilege in our relationship to life. But so I guess I'll go back. I've been dabbling in this space for a long time. I did come to a kind of realization not too long ago, only a few years ago, in relationship to the it was a realization about the role that agriculture, and specifically the practice of tilling and cultivating monoculture agriculture, that played I think a very detrimental role in our relationship to or the breakdown of our relationship to the rest of life and to nature, because once we started tilling the soil, we started disrupting what I would say is this very sacred relationship between the microbial world and our own bodily physiological ecology. And in doing that, I feel like we almost became we started to reorient ourselves in relationship to the whole terrestrial world as more as parasitic, as parasites in a sense. We became like parasites in that we started to extract from the ground and from the rest of the world, from the earth, more energy than we were giving back, and started to undermine the integrity that maintains life. So that is kind of the basis of my understanding of a sacred economy and what I call a regenerative economy, which is really like the antithesis of that extractive relationship to life. It's regenerative economy is really an economy or a human system, because that's in a sense what we're talking about, that is symbiotic, where we're giving back to the sustenance and the thriving of the whole, just as much as we're taking in for our own sustenance and our own survival. But agriculture, I feel, is to go back to work in transforming agriculture is really what I like to call a kind of tongue-in-cheek way, a root cause, because it's both going to the root of the separation, where it's going to the point in our development as a species where we split off from being part of the community, from the rest of the community of life, to and now, as we are becoming aware of the consequences of that, we're now in a place where we can now start to reintegrate ourselves into that community. And really, agriculture and the way that we produce food is that it's that nexus point where we are interfacing with the larger whole that we call the biosphere. And so regenerative agriculture for me is very much a nucleus of this regenerative economy movement. And so I think we, in terms of realizing this transition, we're in a place where we have to operate or work from where we are, which is we are in an economy that does use money and uses investment as a way of moving resources. Now, I struggle, honestly, and to be totally transparent, with the paradox of that there is a trickiness to engaging in the financial world, in the world of capital, because it has a way of I think, well, I'll just put it bluntly, it has a way of corrupting the integrity of the individual in relationship to this larger sacred reality, because it does give you a sense that, oh yeah, this is like, I can just live on this capital and live in service to the capital and live in service to the growth of this capital, rather than actually being truly resonant with the real living universe. But and the finances is, I think, does contribute to this consciousness that we're stuck in, because it really is like a two-dimensional world. It almost is like squeezing our consciousness into this very flat earth dimension, or flat earth consciousness, So it is a tricky, it's a challenging project to use financial capital to catalyze this movement into regenerative agriculture. And I do feel like, we need all these other complementary systems and all these complementary forms of value, and most importantly, these new stories that can help, awaken, I suppose, catch the collective consciousness of humanity before it, plummets into the abyss of self-destruction. But yeah, I think that, there's a considerable number of people who are now waking up to this reality, or to the necessity of this shift, and a lot of people who are being born into wealth, or who have made wealth, but who have woken up. I think very important for, and that is where I am coming from. I am an inheritor, and so I think it's really important to start to leverage the existing systems of investment as well as philanthropy, and direct the energy within these systems towards the uncompromised goal of transitioning the world to a regenerative sacred economy, and we need to do it in a way that is I say uncompromised because it's, I think, very easy for a lot of people within who have money to be seduced by the I think what are built-in compromises of the old system, and I want to emphasize how much philanthropy in the past has been part of the problem, in that it's created this precedent of compromise. That the idea that we can only that we can just take a percentage of the capital or the profit that we make through this industrial capital juggernaut and put that into doing solving some of these the massive problems. That's obviously not enough. We need to be thinking in terms of how do we go all in terms of how do we put all of our energy, all of our resources, all of our entire heart, all of our mental capital, and put it all towards this goal. And that means, I think, taking more risk, of being more bold, of, I guess I would say, if you're a philanthropist, give more of your money away. If you're an investor, don't settle at just putting 5% into regeneration. How do you think in terms of aligning yourself 100%? Because nothing short of that is going to suffice to actually make this critical shift that we have to make at this time in history, because we have a very, very short amount of time right now, is the reality. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. So I'm just so honored and pleased to hear from all of you. Thank you so much for your outlining the core principles of sacred economics. And so with our very short remaining time, I would love to just touch on a couple of different questions very briefly as we're nearing the top of our hour here. So I'm going to begin with you, Charles, and I would love to know, from your perspective, how do we best implement new economic systems, and what is the unique opportunity that this moment in time is offering us in that way?
Yeah, so the first part of my answer is that I don't know, and please don't trust anybody who says that they know. Because whatever it is, it's not going to be that somebody comes up with some brilliant plan and we wipe the slate clean so that we can implement their new plan. It has to be, it has to respect where we are right now and offer plausible next steps. And I think that the first plausible next step is some kind of debt cancellation. Because if there's anything that maintains the global extractive colonial machine, it is debt, especially third world debt, but also personal debt, even corporate debt. And the mechanics of exactly how to do that are not simple. I don't want to just, it's not just a blanket cancellation of all debt, because you're also canceling grandma's savings account if you do that. But that's the basic idea. And as for, I'm really, I'll just say one other thing, just to speak to the necessity of systemic change. Chris was speaking about regenerative agriculture. I mean, everybody is doing things that don't really fit into the economy as we know it, even or to investment paradigms as we know them, because it's all about scale. Whereas something like regenerative agriculture or the protection of a culture or of a place requires a unique and intimate relationship with that place. So you can't necessarily, even like with regenerative agriculture, you can't necessarily scale it up in the way that you can scale something up in the industrial model. And because finance is fundamentally an application of this generic thing called money to a standard situation, it's really hard. This is, normal investment mindsets can't really encompass the kinds of things that we need to do today. And I just want to put that out there as a starting point for thinking about the evolution of our financial system, the evolution of our conception of what investment is. I mean, there's just so much to talk about there. But anyway, I'll just leave it with to examine debt and what it is, how it came about, the dynamics that it maintains. There's, again, a lot that I don't want to try to go into in my remaining 15 seconds. But it's a good starting point to talk about, and it leads to everything else eventually.
Really quickly, Charles, is there anything that the participants of this summit can do? I mean, even in just like a brief call to action that you could think of that any of the participants of this summit could do in order to transition or assist that transition?
There's a million things that they can do, and they all come from the same place, which is recognizing that contrary to the old story, the reason that we are here as beings in this material world is to contribute to life and beauty on this world. We are here to give, and the gifts that we have been given, whether they are inherited wealth or creativity or even good health or even just our breath and our lives, that these gifts are meant to be given forward, to be given from, and not hoarded or directed just at ourselves. Not as a matter of morality and you're a bad person if you don't do that, but simply as a naked truth that that is why we are here. From that realization, I think people begin to discover what their next step is.
Thank you so much, Charles. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
Now I pass it to Franz. Curious, from your perspective, what would catalyze the implementation of new economic systems in mass? And what does a monetary collapse scenario affect? How does a monetary collapse scenario affect these models? And within that context, what can the participants of this summit do to assist in this transition?
Thanks, Amelia. Beautiful question. And thank you everyone for your amazing contributions and input. Such a joy to, it's music to my ears, really. So I can tell you how we are doing it precisely. What we are doing with Seeds is all about financing precisely the transition towards the new economy. And how we're doing it is by rewarding all the people and organizations that are already participating in this great task. And therefore also rewarding the participation in all the tasks that are required to create a healthier society. And in all of these scenarios, echoing to what Chris was saying, regenerative local agriculture is a very hard piece for all of that. And so we start at recognizing and rewarding those that are already serving the transition. And what we are holding right now is since our launch, we already have 350 networks of value-based organizations and already weaving collaboratories together in more than 50 bioregions on 6 continents. And our general strategy is to weave together this plethora of initiatives, movements, new forms of enterprise, lifestyle experiments, if you may, encompassing all aspects of life, which are invisibly connected in a shared attempt to bring about a more sustainable future. And by joining, for example, existing permaculture camps, retreat centers, eco-villages, other educational organizations, we together shape an integrated impulse for genuine transformation, which gives form in itself to a planetary scale network of regenerative hubs, all of which align around a shared vision of change. And what this implies is really that we're exiting the age of siloed competition and where people and planet were exploited by the systems, and entering a new age of radical cooperation and collaboration where the people are in direct control and ownership of the abundant systems that they inhabit. And the reality is that those that are aware of this transition are already taking place, are already joining decentralized models of cooperation and coordination, which are 100% fair, 100% equitable, 100% transparent. And blockchain is one of the technologies at the forefront that enables all of this. And we as humanity already have that at our disposal. And the interesting thing is, as people receive what they currently don't, also following the permaculture principles, the problem is the solution. We're offering communities more voice and more value. And by simply doing that, the power structures that keep humanity in the state of induced scarcity and under control crumble away. From this place of empowerment, it really becomes a peaceful fight, a renaissance, not a revolution, because power over others in this new paradigm becomes obsolete and redundant. And in parallel, as the debt-based systems continue to devalue their own currencies, all we need to do is unify those who are already aware. And in this scenario, in terms of the current context that we are facing, where we are reaching a historical moment that demands a paradigmatic shift, and we as humanity are witnessing in slow motion as the world's financial systems are demolished in real times, it is clear that we're in for one of the longest and most devastating financial collapses in human history. However, the beautiful thing about all of this is that this doesn't have to harm people. It actually is a golden opportunity for alternative systems to step in to serve as a more equitable and healthy medium of exchange. The most destructive effects of a recession are when there is not enough money to go around and people go bankrupt. But this is only true to the story that is the US dollar and the fiat systems. If we can get alternative currencies into the hands of these people now, they won't have to suffer the devastating effects of another extreme cycle of wealth concentration.
Thank you so much, Franz. Thank you so much. And now I pass it over to Alexis. And in the last modules of this summit, the Sacred Economic Summit, we've been discussing rights of nature and sacred territories initiatives, as well as original principles. And so my question for you, Alexis, is how can these new economic systems best integrate these principles of rights of nature, sacred territories initiatives, and original principles? And also, as I've asked each of the panelists, what can the participants of the summit do to assist in this transition?
Thank you, Amelia. Well, I knew my question in advance, and I came up with my answer while listening to all of the panelists, because there's so many threads that they've said that I want to pick up on. So I have a three-part plan. One, rebuild a moral economy that supports regeneration. How to do that? You need to decolonize your mind. Everybody needs to decolonize our minds. So what comes to mind for me is when I was a kid up in Alaska, elders would always say things like, we were here before the Russians colonized Alaska first, and we were here after they left. We were here before the Americans, and we'll be here long after they leave. And as a child, I took that very literally, and I was confused. I was like, ooh, who are the Americans? What about my non-native friends? They have to go too? But as an adult, I realized it was more of a metaphor that the elders were speaking in. And we have native peoples, I mean, we've survived these collapses. a monetary collapse is not going to kill us. I mean, we've lived through it and we're still here. So that's to say a decolonized perspective is a long view. The thing to keep in mind about capitalism and the current system is that it makes people forget. When I used to teach introduction to anthropology and I taught kinship to freshmen, I asked them to ask their grandparents where they came from. At least a third of them didn't know where any of their family members came from to get to America. But I knew, and when we say introductions to each other in our Native communities, so we're taught to remember that and be able to go back generations and know who we're related to and where they moved and when. So that's a decolonized perspective. 2, invest in protecting Indigenous stewarded lands. If people haven't got it yet, that is good for all of us. We saw that in the US during the No DAPL protests in 2016. Finally, Americans realized that if the Missouri River was contaminated for 1,000 miles, that it would affect all of us. In 2016, Trump deregulated federal and BLM lands, putting them up for auction for extractive industries. And if you look at where those lands are located, they are around the biggest reservations in the West. If those tribes are able to adopt rights of nature into their tribal constitutions, they should be able to protect extraterritorial areas around their trust lands. So I realize that's technical to the US, but the point is it's good for all of us to support these tribal-led initiatives. And then have these initiatives around territory and protecting land be led by the people who carry the knowledge about how to take care of the planet, knowledge that's been gathered for thousands of years of living in place. Because remember, if you're not Indigenous or a member of an Indigenous tribe right now, capitalism makes people forget even what it was like before their ancestors were capitalist. And it makes people forget where they come from so it can exploit. And part of that is that we need to follow what nature tells us how to live and how to be. So I want to share one tiny story with you. Summer in Alaska, when you're a kid, you go berry picking a lot. And one thing that you learn as a kid, if you hang out with old ladies and berry pick with them, is what to say when you run into a bear berry picking, because it happens all the time. Now, for some reason, I didn't realize at some point in my life when I moved to the lower 48 that everybody didn't have that kind of basic knowledge. And I realized that most Americans, if they ran into a bear close up, they would probably like pee their pants or run away or faint or, get out a gun and shoot it, rather than just talk to it and ask if you can share the space with them nicely. And quietly back away, which is one strategy that I was taught, and it does work. So I'm not saying that capitalism is that bear, but maybe I am. Maybe we need to rethink our relationship with that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alexis. That's astute. All right, so I'm going to pass it over to Lahana, and thank you so much for your explanation of where you've come from and where you see time really fitting in. And so in that, I'm curious, what is the role of the current economic paradigm in this transition? And also simultaneously, what can the participants of the summit do to assist in this transition?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I feel like the current economic paradigm is also can be seen as us, I think when we see the economy or like the financial institutions as outside of ourselves, it's very disempowering, and we feel like they're so hard to do. I remember when I watched those documentaries, I mentioned, like, this is such a big problem to solve. I have nothing to do rather than pray for the banks to one day wake up and understand what is really happening. But when I understood that even the word economy from the Greek is kind of like the management of your house, like the eco, like the house, the home, the heart, including anything on your ecosystem, like the land, and then this management, you know. So the way that we manage our homes, and then the way that we manage communities, and then the way that we manage cities, networks, the banks, they kind of, we start with that, you know. If we think about on the principle of reciprocity, it's also related to balance, coming back to balance. There's some systems that are taking a lot, giving too little. There's sometimes in our lives that we are giving, and we are burned out because we are not receiving, you know. So understanding how can we balance in our household the energies of giving and receiving, of understanding that the value of an economy is really to create the highest expression of ourselves and to enable more of what we can do. That in practical ways can be like establishing in your community of friends, in your church, in your group, how can we give and receive more between each other? How can I feel free to ask for help and also be open to receive help through this process, in which of course there's technology that supports, like time banking, where you can communities for giving and receiving, and people can post what they offer. But getting this ritual, sacred ritual of like allowing yourself to ask for help and also giving help, you know, because sometimes just giving without understanding that you also have the right and to receive, it's as important. And in our society, people have been taking and receiving too much in many ways, but on a home level, that's a way. And on the other side, if I really see the current economy, including new currencies, I'm very happy to share that, like, believe now, I'm the head of Social Bank International, and Social Bank, besides being the first B Corp and social impact bank in Brazil, they are also a bank that is including time currency into their economy, the normal economy. So think about a bank, they have, for example, peer-to-peer lending. So I lent $1,000 from Alexis, and I say, hey, Alexis, if I don't have the $1,000 to pay you back, can I pay you 500 and 5 hours of my time helping you learn Portuguese? And she's like, no, Lohana, I don't want to learn Portuguese, but can you give me 5 time credits so I can pay someone to teach me how to cook? Oh, okay. So we have a deal. So in that moment, we just expanded the current economy, because before we just include money, fiat or cryptocurrencies to pay each other. And now we say, no, wait, your reputation, your skills, your knowledge, the way people see you, it's also part of the economy, and it also has value. And the movement of a established bank or a real bank to come and say, hey, we believe that time is value and people can use their currency of trust to create more deals and create more abundance into their lives through this recognition, is something that I believe we are going to see more and more through this process of like merging with a social impact bank, and also creating systems that support time currency within platforms. What I see, it's like cities now organizing as smart cities and coming to us and saying, hey, how can we as a smart city implement a system for time currency to be included in the assets that are available for that city? You know, maybe I don't have the money to pay for my taxes, but I can volunteer on the city community centers and give my time to support the city, and that make the city better and help us all grow. So what I see in this transition and the play that the current economy has into supporting us into the new economy or the transition, it's really to include resources, include time, include these assets or good deeds, include the value of human beings in a way that we are not seeing, because we treat humans as machines rather than like embracing their uniqueness. And in a personal level, finding the balance between giving and receiving, and really allowing yourself to experience this flow of, I have value, so I'm gonna ask for help and I'm gonna open myself to receive. And I see the value of each human being in my life. Let me give, let me show to them how that is recognized in practice, not just in a idea of equality, abundance, and reciprocity, but really in the way we interact as humanity and manage our household, which is really the economy principle.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lahana. Thank you for that. It has been such an honor to spend time with these incredible people today. Just want to say thank you to all of our panelists. Also, thank you so much to all of the participants of this summit. We are very much a collaborative ecosystem emerging together. So it is not about one person sharing information. It is about the collective sharing all of their resources, gifts, thoughts. And so I want to say thank you to you, the participants, as well. I want to then hand it over to my wonderful co-collaborator, Lisa Chacon, the facilitator of the Sacred Economic Summit, to close our time together and give us a few updates. Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Amelia, and thank you, everyone. Just want to remind you all that you're receiving, along with this video, some supplemental videos and readings so that you can go
So here we are back again with each other. And what a yummy, yummy day we had, exploring all these different possibilities and threads that seem to be coming together in a full convergence. So much knowledge and so much experience that's also coming to the table to kind of re-emphasize what everybody has been saying all day. Our new economy is about value and trust. And I hope we've seeded some of that thinking into everyone that's here, or watered the seed that you already carry because you know that to be a truth. I also want to say a big thank you to Christian for moderating us all day, and for the team that's behind you on our little channels, zipping instruction with what to do when things go awry, so that it could run smooth as it did today. So thank you for this beautiful offering. That we are going to be closing our event with this gathering. And I just want to say, there is a call by Mother right now. There is a call loud and clear. She wants all her light bringers to light themselves up and stand firmly in that space. She wants us to bring our full presence into our form. She wants and needs for us to learn how to stay in present moment, not to let our minds look ahead of ourselves or behind ourselves, but to stay in present moment. And when we do that, she will bring everything we need to the moment. Then we must embrace what she brings, whether it be a joyful moment or a challenging moment or an amazing inspirational moment. Everything we need in order to take our step into the next moment has to first occur in this one. So I wish you well on presencing the moment. And I'd like to end with an offering of a prayer that a dear, dear friend of mine, Gary Malkin, produced some time back that I think is relevant for the time that we're in now. I hope that you enjoy it and that it helps you move into your day with the beauty that you are. Blessings to you all. So now if we can have that little video.
entered this life a ways back and put skin on to walk two-legged in this creation. And what a glorious time it was. It taught me about breath and about sensing and feeling and caring through my heart. And I walked on around that red road, looking and trying to understand more about the mystery and the secrets she holds. And you spoke to me through the wind. And you sang to me through the birds. And you brought challenges forth so that I might listen to the message you bring me more sincerely. And I kept walking down this road. And I came round the bend at the middle of that curve in the road, and I began to find a secret in the spirit of myself. And still I walked on. Sometimes blind and deaf, and sometimes with pain. But I fought with my fears, and I embraced my unknowingness, and still I walked on. And my children and my family stood with me. And we came to know each other in those later years more than we had before. For some of our falseness had fallen away. And still I walked on. And I kept walking on this road towards you, towards that other world that grew closer to me with each step. And as the door of the Great Spirit world came closer, my fear loomed up inside sometimes, but something called me forth. The morning star rose with each day. And my prayer became a centering. And still I walked on. Until I began to hear the song of the mother. And her arms embraced me so. she carried me right to the door. And as the door opened, I heard her song. And her song lifted me up. So I could soar.
Have a blessed, blessed day. Thank you, one and all. Mwah.
Thank you.